Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Carmelo, and with me is my guest at this time, Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee. Thank you for being here today.
Well, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it. I'm in room 116. I've invited everybody to come down and see me, so thanks for coming in.
Thank you. My first question is, what is it that made you want to be a politician and get into politics?
So my background, my track record was more coming out of college with an education degree, political science, and then I went into business. So worked in business for many years. Worked with the Boys and Girls Club as a volunteer on the board, as a member on the board, as a president of the club, and then as a coach. And then I had a friend that was a mayor at the time. Mayor Alger asked me if I would run for a town council, which I did. And then over a period of time, I served 4 years on the town council, 2 years and then 2 years off and then 2 more years. And I saw that there were some things that were happening in my town, the town of Cumberland, that were concerning, in particular on the finances. So having a little background on finances, we're able to come in and address that. So that's kind of what motivated me to run for. Of course, first was asked by a friend to serve on the council, and then second it was I saw a need that I could fill, and we had a good track record as a mayor for the 12 years I was there, and we solved a lot of financial problems. And so yeah, so that was the path.
And when you were a town councilman, what prompted you to go to run for mayor, keep going upwards?
Yeah, so I saw a need. We were when I saw that our finances were in a little bit of disarray in our community. When I became mayor, we had a 5-point downgrade the week before I actually was sworn in on our bond rating. We were a couple of years behind on our audits. We had a accumulated deficit that was in the millions of dollars, and so I saw that I saw that coming. And so that was the one thing that prompted me to go from town council to the mayor's office, and I was elected 6 times as a mayor.
What kind of advice would you give to someone, say youth, or say anyone that wanted to get into politics? What advice would you start them off with?
I think the main thing is that you should be local, in my opinion. Politics is local, right? As we heard from Speaker O'Neill at one time, right, Tip O'Neill. And I think it's not necessarily a step in right to an elected office. It's getting involved in something that appeals to you in the community. For me, it was the Boys and Girls Club work, it was the youth activity, it was coaching. And so I think that's the first step in, is to find something that you truly love, you're passionate about, that you want to make your community better. And when you find that, I think you should get involved on that level. I was a member of our Democratic committee before I was elected to a town council seat. So I think that's what you do. You find something that you're passionate about, and then you inject yourself into that area inside your community local. And at some point in time, you're going to know whether your skill set and your interest really align with public service, because this is community public service in the end. It doesn't matter whether you're a lieutenant governor or a local town council person. It's all about community service. And so if you have a passion for that, you're going to know pretty quickly.
Now, when you were mayor, we spoke about this a little bit earlier, but this is the first part is what would you say was your biggest contribution to the city as mayor, and what would you say was your biggest mistake, what you wish you could have done better while you were mayor?
So I think the first contribution was to address the finances, to make sure that our community was financially stable. I think there's 3 things in a local community that are very important. It's kind of the tripod, and you need all 3, otherwise the stool falls down, right? You need strong public schools. You need public safety. People have to feel safe that they're in their community. And then you need strong fiscal management and finances. So I focused on those 3 while I was a mayor. And the first thing to do was to straighten out the finances. So I think that was, lauded as one of my biggest contributions, was that we addressed the bond rating, had 8 bond upgrades while I was a mayor. Ended in AA status, which was the highest that Cumberland has had, and that we've been measuring with Moody's and Standard & Poor's. But I also think that, so that was a big thing where we ended up with surpluses, controlled the taxes in a way where people could afford to live in our community, and yet we were able to overcome by bringing municipalities together, talking about health insurance costs, talking about pension costs, complicated things that you need a good team to really help you with. And I think one of the things that I was fortunate enough, I had a really good finance team that was put together. And then the other thing has to do with education. We need to make sure that we do everything that we possibly can to make sure we have good public schools. And when I started to dig into our public schools in Cumberland, we had 2 failed elementary schools on a national standard. We had a middle school in major trouble. We had a high school that was absolutely out of, that was falling down. And we had caution tape wrapped around our bleachers at the football field, and that was an indication of what was happening there. But I did not just let that happen. I stepped forward, said we're going to fix that high school, we're going to invest in our schools. But when I found out that I opened up an office for children youth and learning that's still goes today. Andrea, who's in our office, was a member of the leadership council that I helped put together, the mayor's leadership council. So I think that it was the finances, setting the standard that the schools are important, not only investing in the schools, but also taking a look at the outcomes in the schools, which drove me to which I think I'm very proud of, the fact that we were able to open up a public school that is led by mayors regionally, and they're called mayoral academies. They're public schools. We graduate the first class this year, and I think that competition is helping our public schools get better. So I'm pretty proud of the finances, and then the schools, the work that we did in the schools, and then also the public safety. Under my lead, when I was mayor, we became a nationally accredited public safety police department. We moved all our rescue department to all paramedics, which is the highest level of service that you can have in a rescue department. I was convinced that we should do that, and we led that in that direction. And then in the fire departments in town, we had 4 independent fire districts. I made sure that the voters voted on a referendum about consolidating and merging those 4 departments into one department. And now today we have 1 department instead of 4 departments in town. So those 3 things are very important, and I'm pretty, I feel as though that we made a lot of progress for our community, during the time I wasn't there.
And the second part of that question, what do you feel you wish you could have accomplished that you weren't able to while you were there? So
one of the things that you do is, and we're doing it here as Lieutenant Governor, is I think of a pipeline, and you continue to put good, sound ideas in that pipeline, and it takes a while from the back of the pipe and out to the front of the pipe, and actually become reality, right? So the one thing that I think about is the things that I left in the pipeline that were ready to come out, and I'm sure that if I was there, we all have our own fingerprints on things, so they might have come out a little bit different. But it was time to move forward, and a number of things that we had in progress are happening 3 years later now. So in a way, you weren't there to kind of usher them through and with your own kind of fingerprints, but they're still, I was proud that we left them there. But I think that sometimes you like to complete all those projects, but that physically you can't do. You can't be in 2 places at the same time.
Now, as a lieutenant governor, not everyone is well informed of what the duties are because it varies across states and administrations. What are your usual duties as lieutenant governor? So
I think that I look at them very well crafted because of the statutes that we run under. So one is you've got to be a real strong advocate for the small businesses, and that's where when I was in small business, we know I chair the Small Business Advocacy Council. I take that pretty serious, very serious, to be an advocate for small businesses. That's shaped in statute. We also are involved in Emergency Management Council, and that's why we have our former Chief of Police, Tony Silva, is my Chief of Staff here. He was a police chief when I was mayor in a period of time. So we pay attention to all emergency management. That is clearly defined. And then the long-term health care, I chair the Long-Term Health Care Council as a lieutenant governor. So that's well defined, working on issues that are related to health care, aging-friendly communities, Alzheimer's issues. So there's definitely a workload. In addition to that, you inherit some really good projects from the former lieutenant governors, whether it was Lieutenant Governor Roberts, or Lieutenant Governor Fogey, or Lieutenant Governor Waden, right? That you inherit some things that you want to keep those balls in the air. So there's a strong interest in this office on Veterans Affairs. So we involve ourselves with the National Guard, the Veterans Administration, Director Yan, who heads up the Veterans, he's the Director of Veterans Affairs in the state of Rhode Island. Operation Stand Down, that works with veterans. We're under our care and custody is the Garden of Heroes, which is right on the state grounds, that that we honor those who have served our country, men and women who served our country, who have been who have died defending our freedom since 9/11. So we have these other duties that kind of came inherent in the office. We're the vehicle to make sure that any deployed or dispatched serviceman or woman. We have people over the holidays that are in Cuba and Texas and overseas. We put together what kind of a care package, a Rhode Island care package, and we engineer that. We raise the money to make sure that every serviceman or woman that's out of state during the holidays receives a package that is identifiable Rhode Island, whether it's the coffee syrup, the Dell's lemonade, the local Valley Breeze, whatever's in, and with a note that says we appreciate your service. So there's many functions, but I think you really need to be all in with the small businesses to be in this office. And then if you look at on the way out or way in, I think you may have seen as you come into our office, there's a shield for every community in the state. Our theme is number 39. It's 39 cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island. Each one counts. Every business counts. And I made a pledge to all the local municipal leaders that I worked with for all those years that there would be a place where they could hang that hat. And so we actually put a ceremonial municipal hat rack right at the end of those shields, so that they know people who are running our communities, managing our communities, know that they have an advocate and a friend for all the residents that live in each of all the 39 communities. So there's a great deal to do, and we get involved with a number of special projects that we certainly can talk about, I think, as we continue this interview.
Now, you did announce a few months ago that you are running for re-election. It was speculated among a lot of people that you may end up running for governor, but my question is, why did you decide to run for re-election instead of running for governor this year?
So I think that's a good question, and you're right. A number of people asked whether that was whether they were asking because they were curious, or asking because they wanted to be supportive, or asking that they just wanted me out of the way. There's always a motive for floating those rumors. But I'll go back to when we talked about how I entered into government. I think that you have to have a reason to ask the people to give their vote of confidence that you can be in the positions that you're in. As Lieutenant Governor, we're filling that pipeline right now. We're contributing into the state, making it more economically viable. We're doing things that I think are important. And there's projects right now, I mentioned before, when I left as mayor, there was projects that were in the pipeline that you might have wanted to have a little more work on. But we have projects in the pipeline here. And the way I answer the question about the governor things, that maybe someday, but not today. I think that there's work to be done left in this office. We can contribute in a way that is should be beneficial to the people who live in the state of Rhode Island. And examples of that, we just launched an effort with the municipalities to talk about the opioid addiction issue in the state of Rhode Island, and bringing in national people from that are on a lawsuit that's going to help communities get the resources they need to educate, research, and to provide rehab type of programming for the families and for the individuals that are addicted right now. And then we also have other projects that we're doing with the national grid, with the utilities, helping the utility ratepayers get a fair shake in terms of making sure that the level playing field between the ratepayers and the shareholders. We're in the process right now of moving on something that I think that is going to be very important to save the ratepayers millions of dollars as a result of the new tax law. Matt, so the new tax law reduced the tax rate by 14 points. Well, those 14 points are going to give more profit to the utilities right now. And when the rates were actually shaped, we were calculating their profit on a 35% tax rate. Now it's 21. There's millions of dollars that should go back to the ratepayers. So there's much that can be done as lieutenant governor, and the governors. We have a governor right now. We're moving the economy forward. And I don't think you just run for an office because somehow you think that it's in your best interest to run for that office. You run for an office because you believe that you believe that you're going to offer something that is far and above what above in terms of value that what currently exists in that office. So I felt as though that we're moving in the right direction, and we have a Democrat in office, an incumbent Democrat in Governor Raimondo, and I'm going to support her re-election. I happen to be an incumbent lieutenant governor, and I think that there's value to having been elected, and we're running again, and we expect that we'll do a great job in the campaign, and we'll get re-elected as for another 4 years, and then we'll see what happens after that point.
Speaking of the election, there is a progressive Democrat, Aaron Regenberg, who announced he's also going to run in the primary. My question is, what are your thoughts on him as well as the ideas that he has, and do you think that they will be able to work here?
Well, as far as the campaign goes, we'll start the campaign that when we put our names on the line in June, and we go out and get our signatures, and the campaign will start, right? I can only tell you what the work that I've done and the work that I'm going to continue to do, and then we'll evaluate the type of agenda, which is kind of a national agenda, quite frankly, right? We have a national agenda. A good example of that, I came out publicly today and let people know that, look, I'm all in for health care. I supported the Affordable Care Act when it came out. We've done a good job in Rhode Island to ensure more individuals, and I think it's important that we understand that a proposal that is out there currently, I don't know if you're aware, but it was a proposal to make Rhode Island the first state in the country to go under a Bernie Sanders model of health insurance. And yet, as much as I support a strategy that would bring as much good health care to everybody and all individuals in our state, you can't deny the fact that other states have tried to implement the Bernie Sanders model, which is a progressive model, as you've said, right? It's an outside progressive party strategy trying to impose this on individual states. And for your information, and anybody who's listening to this, Vermont has dismissed that idea right in Bernie Sanders' home state as being economically unfeasible for one state to absorb all the costs. California has done the same thing. Colorado, which is a very progressive state, has in a voter initiative has voted against having Colorado be the first state in the country to be a single payer health insurance model, Bernie Sanders model. By 80% to 20%, they defeated that in that state because they knew that a state that did it all by themselves will end up with very budgetary issues that they just can't manage. So when we have an outside group of a progressive party trying to find a state that would become the first state, become part of the experiment, and yet we know financially it doesn't work in those other states, it's not going to work in Rhode Island. So there are good ideas that you support, but there are also ideas, not every idea that comes across the table that comes from anybody, whether it's from the conservative or the Tea Party strategy or the Progressive Party, not every one of their ideas is perfect. And that's an example of one idea that is being pushed very hard, that no one state is going to be able to financially absorb the economic cost and the tax increases that are going to result from a single standalone payer insurance. Bernie Sanders the Bernie Sanders model.
Now, speaking of things that are on more of a Bernie Sanders model, as you mentioned, it was reported yesterday that the Providence Journal, that a Rhode Island lawmaker wants to offer a bill to raise the minimum wage to $15 in Rhode Island. What are your thoughts on that, and what effects do you think it will have on the economy of the state?
Well, going back to one of the criteria that I think we need to be sitting here in this office is being a strong advocate of the small businesses in the state of Rhode Island, because a good percentage of the people who are employed in the state of Rhode Island work for small businesses. Listen to the small businesses. You're not going to be able to sit in this office and advocate a sharp increase in the minimum wage, where it's going to negatively impact small businesses throughout the state of Rhode Island. So I think incremental increases on the minimum wage, as Rhode Island is currently involved in, with some sort of cost of living index that is attached to those incremental moves, makes sense. But sharp increases where you're increasing, you're going from $10 to $15, you got a 50% increase in the minimum wage. Small businesses are not going to be able to handle that. As a result, you're going to have more small businesses struggle. We were with one business down in South Kingstown that explained that directly to me. He says, look, we're starting our business. My husband and wife team, right, work that business. They're sitting there saying, I've got 9 employees. If I have more costs, I'm only taking one paycheck home right now to start this business. What is that going to do to my small business if I have mandated costs from the state piled on to small business? So I wouldn't support an increase to $15 an hour in one shot. I don't think that there's really examples throughout the country that are comparable that have done that. I know that there are states that put referendums on to move the minimum wage to $12 over a 5-year time frame. I think that makes more sense than a spike, an immediate spike to something that it's going to have negative impacts on the small businesses. They employ many people in the state of Rhode Island. We want to have strong small business. We are working, Matt, to, I think, a very important point, to increase small business friendliness. We work every day in this office to try to increase small business friendliness, level the playing field between one state and another state in terms of what that means. These are type of programs with like the single pay, one state single pay strategy, a bump in the minimum wage, that is not going to make you more business friendly. It's going to make you less business friendly. And you got to remember that we're at the bottom of small business friendliness in the country, right? We're moving up slowly, but we're moving in the right direction. And we need to make sure that it's in our economic interest and everybody that works and lives in our communities to see small business friendliness increase and not decrease.
Now, my next question is in regards to the governor. What are your thoughts on her administration, her job performance thus far, and how she's been as governor within 3 years into her job?
And again, 3 years is a relatively short time to move the needle a lot, right? So it depends on what area you're talking about. So if you're talking about the economy, we're showing improvements in the economy, right? If you're looking at what the General Assembly has done, what the governor's office has proposed, the lights in every business in the state of Rhode Island used to pay a sales tax. They no longer pay a sales tax. That's about $30 million that was saved by the small business community, the business community in the state. They could go back into their businesses. Under the governor, that we reduced the unemployment tax. And that was another $25 million to $30 million of savings into the business community as well. So I think that where we're trying to move the economy forward, 3 years is a short time frame to actually move the needle a long way, but we're certainly moving the needle in the right direction. We're working with rating agencies that are rating our small business friendliness in the state. Where we're at F's and we had a grade and a half upgrade, we're approaching C right now. We need to do everything we can to make sure that C turns into a B and the B turns into an A in terms of business friendliness. So in that area, I think the governor has been responsible for moving the needle in the right direction, and I think that we should be recognizing that. In terms of other areas, I don't know what other specific areas that you would grade her on, but maybe you could give me a little help of what you would want to grade her on.
Well, one of her other things that we could focus on besides the economy, we could focus more on her performance on social issues and things to do with the community that are not the economy, but social issues. How do you judge her on that part? On how she acts with the community and how she's been helping people in terms of not the economy, not the jobs, but like how the people live their day-to-day lives and how they, you know, things in the community, things that are like public facilities, and how she's been bringing in things like that in the community to enhance how the community is.
I think she's been very aggressive on the infrastructure issues, right, with road works. I think that time will tell whether the tolling is going to work out well for her, but she was bold about that. And the improvements we're making to our roads and bridges not only create a safer communities, as I talked about, but also employing people. I think that you ask some of the people who have been out of work and high unemployment, right? We had a relatively high unemployment nationally, and now we're kind of more in terms of the national norm there. But we always can do better in terms of increasing the per capita income. And again, in 3 years, you're not going to really move that needle as far as people might expect. In the schools, as you know, as I told you earlier, I'm definitely all in on the strongest public schools possible. I think that there are some things that the governor has initiated there that have been helpful, whether it's in technology and coding in every high school in the state of Rhode Island, public high school, recognizing that, the job training programs, there's tech training programs that as we visit different manufacturers that for people that are still in the school age or just maybe not having employment to train them for electric boat. And so I think the list is relatively long. Is it satisfactory? I think that our election will see whether there's a patience to continue along the path the governor has outlined. But if we make the progress that we made in the last 3 years, in the next 3 years, I think that the state is going to be moving in a better spot where we have historically been at the first in and the last out of recessions. We really need to be working very hard in the time frame where the economy has improved since that last downturn and that deep recession that we had, the Great Recession we had in the 2008 time frame. So Rhode Island had a long way to go, but I think that it's making progress, and I think that that's what you always want to see. You want to make sure that we're moving in the right direction, and I think that I think when all is evaluated, and any new ideas that might come to the table that would be in opposition to what is currently happening in our General Assembly or in the governor's office, let's see what the options are on the table. And then you can make that determination. But I think that we can be optimistic about the progress that we've made over the last 3 years.
Now, it was also recently hit the news that Raimondo said with DCYF she wanted to take it to 21 years old, where it would still affect the children. Instead of 18, it would go to 21. I want to ask your thoughts on that and how effective you think that would be and if it will work.
So I can't say that I'm really very familiar about that, but in concept, to me, it makes sense. If there's young people still in need of support systems, a number of these individuals, and I've coached many of them in basketball and have been involved with a number of young people are completely on their own at 15 years old, right? Or they're in a family situation where they need help. And sometimes it takes a while for them that they need support systems to find their way either through school or through a job employment. And I think that the age right now, if there is a need in that 18 to 21, it makes sense to me to give young people every option that they can have, especially those who are in a system where basically they have been identified that they need assistance. So I think the concept it makes a lot of sense to me. We want young people in the state, whether they're, and I've said this in public a number of times, everybody has a certain amount of hurdles to jump to get to where they want to go. Some have more than others. In that case, those young people that I think that the governor's talking about have more hurdles to jump than, say, someone like yourself, who got the advantage of going to a school and living in a family that is supporting that. And congratulations, being in a position to get to get offers in school, a scholarship to be able to continue your education. Not everybody has that advantage, right? So you have a number of hurdles to jump to get to where you want to go, and there's people who have less hurdles. There's people who have more hurdles, and we need to make sure that we give those support systems to allow people who have more hurdles, like people who would be involved in the DCYF system, every opportunity to succeed in every way possible, so that Rhode Island's economy, in the end, would benefit from that.
Now, my next question is, we've talked a lot about businesses and jobs. One of the biggest issues is with McCoy Stadium and the Paw Sox and with them moving. What's your thoughts on this entire situation with the Paw Sox moving to Worcester or wherever they maybe end up moving? And what do you predict should happen? What do you think should be done in order to make the best outcome?
Well, as a former municipal leader, I'm supporting Mayor Grivian in the city of Pawtucket in its effort to keep the Paw Sox here. I think the Senate has approved a plan that is workable. The House has got to take a look at it and see whether or not they need to, make some adjustments to it. My hope is that they do. My hope is that they find the common ground.